What's going on, everybody? This is Randall Barnes, the founder of HBCU Pulse and the host of HBCU Pulse Radio, in the building for another special edition of the show on today, where we are once again broaching the topic of politics, but this time we're talking about local politics in the state of Georgia. I have Jayden Williams, Clark Atlanta University student, Stockbridge, Georgia City Commissioner, and he also is running to be mayor of Stockbridge, Georgia, and he's the youngest candidate to seek the position at 21 years old. Jaden, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? And thank you for having me.
Listen, I am amazing. I love the history. I love folks like young folks really making things happen, because we got to do it in our 20s, because we have to build a career and then grow that career of service. And I love that you're already started. So I gave the introduction of you, but I want you to give our audience an introduction of who you are.
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. I'm Jayden Williams. I am a student scholar, I would say, at Clark Atlanta University, born and raised in what I call God's favorite city, and that's the amazing city of Stockbridge. But I have experience in both urban living as well as rural living, as my family's from Hawkinsville, Georgia. I love to call myself a southern gentleman because a lot of the opportunities and a lot of the principles from the South is really what raised me to who I am today, especially with the grounding principles of how I kind of live every day.
I love it. I love it. So listen, you're at Clark Atlanta University. I love Clark Atlanta. Shout out to Jada Jenkins, my Miss Clark Atlanta University. I did her campaign. I always love Clark Atlanta. Shout out to Shakana. Shout out to all my folks down there. So I got a lot of love, Clark Atlanta. I went to Fort Valley, as you can see. I got for the radio audience, for the podcast audience, I have on a gold cardigan that has blue accents that says 1895 on it. So, I had to step up a little bit because I'm interviewing a future mayor. So I had to make sure I stepped up to represent my HBC as well. But we got so much love, Clark Atlanta University, and a lot of the amazing things that you're doing.
That's right.
But I have to talk to you about this, man, because you are currently a student at Clark Atlanta University, and you serve as commissioner of Stockbridge. And now you're looking to be the youngest mayor candidate in Stockbridge history. So, what made you pursue this amazing journey of public service at this age?
I'm gonna be honest, right? A lot of our ancestors fought for and I know it sounds very cliche, but our ancestors fought for rights to vote, right? And the right to actually want to run, the eagerness to want to run for office, but make sure that they also have the opportunity to run. In my household, civic duty and our civic opportunity is just as important as education. So for me, I wanted to find avenues to also pour into my community outside of just voting, outside of just protesting, outside of just sending emails to my representatives. I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to be at those seats. And I think Shirley Chisholm said it best when she said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, you bring your own seat. And so at this point, I'm bringing my own seat, but I'm also taking some of theirs. And so that's what I think as a young person, as a scholar, especially at Clark Atlanta University, that's what it has taught me. If you can't bring your own seat, and if you can't get a seat, you take theirs.
I love that. So I saw, looking at your bio, that you served as a White House HBCU scholar for 2 years, in 2022 and this year in 2024. Now, before we continue the conversation, I have to let you know that I was a former White House scholar in 2017. At that point in time, we called it the White House HBCU All-Stars. Okay. That was like, because they switched it. They switched it in 2018 to Scholars of HBCU Competitiveness, and now it's just the Scholars. So listen, when I saw that, I'm like, listen, see, the White House folks, like the White House HBCU folks, we do stuff. We make things happen. We make changes in the world. So first and foremost, as an alum of that program, congratulations to you for all the amazing things that you're doing. And I really want to spotlight that part of your journey, because I know what it did for me. Because if it was not for the White House HBCU program, I would not be doing HBCU Pulse because that's what really exposed me to national HBCU leadership because I was so focused on what was going on at Fort Valley. But that program allowed me to see what FAMU, what Dillard, what North Carolina A&T, what all these institutions was doing. And also I got the opportunity to network with a lot of HBCU students around the nation. So I want to hear about your experience. Tell us about your experience doing it twice.
I have to be honest with you. The first time I was like, oh, snap, I got it. But the second time, I said, oh, Lord, they picked me again. I had to do something right. But just like you said, it's definitely an opportunity that allowed me to grow, especially in my career field. Having the opportunity to meet with HBCU high arc leaderships. This is who we possibly want to be our commencement speaker. Like having the opportunity to sit with them in a random opportunity, having the opportunity to sit with presidents and have the opportunity to talk about why HBCUs are important. What's the importance of them? How can we pour back as a community, but also how can we pour back into the local communities that they're in? And so with that, even with the HBCU Scholar now, like I don't do as much with it, but I'll say it in a room and they're like, oh my gosh, what did you do with this? Or how did you do this? It opens a lot of doors to allow avenues to increase your exposure, but also increase your impact.
Yes, and for me, that was my first time flying on a plane. My first time
Really?
flying on a plane, yes, my first time flying on a plane was being a White House scholar. Because I'm gonna call myself a scholar too, because it was all star. I'm a scholar. I'm an all-star scholar. So it was our first time flying on a plane, and my first time going to DC. And I know it was a transformative experience. I'm glad you got that experience. And shout out to Elise Jones. Like, Elise Jones in the building, making it happen. She holds it down. I love her. Shout out to her. But let's
I want
also
to I want to say shout out to Elise Gillespie because she's married now. So I'm gonna give her credit to her marriage.
I didn't know that. Okay. See, that's what we love that. We love that. But she be holding it down. She holds it down. And I'm so glad that she's still working with that program and making it happen. And it's been 10 years. It's been past 10 years. You were part of that 10th cohort. So
Yep.
just to see it continue to go on, and we wanted to make sure that program continues to get the recognition and spotlight that it deserves. So let's talk about other elements of your student experience. So tell us about your experience in student leadership on campus as freshman class president and also as student government association treasurer.
Ooh, when I tell you, and at any HBCU, running an election is just as hard as running this election for public office. It's all about persuading your community, persuading your peers to let them know that you're willing to do the work. My time as president and SGA treasurer was absolutely astonishing because I had the opportunity to lead. And with that, I had the opportunity to represent freshman year, almost 1,200 students that came in my freshman class, and then having the opportunity as a sophomore to represent the undergraduate and graduate admissions at Clark Atlanta. It's absolutely amazing because I get exposure to the board of trustees. I get to speak on behalf of the student body that actually needs the concerns and wants to voice their concerns. And as treasurer, I made sure we had the money in the bank. And that's just some of the things that I also plan to implement, and some of the lessons that I've learned and some of the opportunities that I saw as freshman president and as treasurer is what I also plan to do to the city as well.
I love that. I love the bridge of student leadership to governance outside of your HBCU. I think that that's something that is important. And you grew up in Georgia and you have a family with a strong history of public service. And your grandmother, Vivian Thomas, currently serves as Henry County District 4 Commissioner. So I want to talk about that element of it. How has your grandmother influenced your approach to leadership and also public service?
My grandmother, she's inspiration number one to me. But when it comes to public service, she actually helped me shape the look and perspective on public service in general. I would say she showed me exactly how a community thrived and how we had the opportunity to make sure our community was successful. For example, she and we started a organization called Game On Junior Commissioners, where we would bring a group of commissioners in, young people like myself, and we would actually work on behalf of her for the city or for the district, I would say. Sorry, not the county. And we would just kind of have projects. And one of the main projects that I spearheaded with her was Mickey D. Cochran Park and renovating that park that hadn't been renovated in over 20 years. She gave us a $1 million budget. myself and the fellow junior commissioners, we got her up at $3.7 million because we understood that the investment is more than just a dollar sign, but it's the investment that we pour back into the community and the needs and the wants of the community. So she's poured a lot. She's shown me opportunity, and she's also shown me how investing in our community is a foundation for a brighter tomorrow.
So you're currently 21 years old. And one thing I always push back against when it comes to discourse, especially on social media, is that I think that we vilify young age and old age because we think that people that are young don't know what they're doing. And we vilify older age because we believe that they're out of touch with what's going on. And I push against that because I think that both ways you can be in touch as an older person, but also you can be knowledgeable of what's going on and be ready for leadership as a younger person. So that's something that I always push back on. So you're 21 years old. You're currently a Clark Atlanta University student. So what life experience, whether it's personal or professional or within your time as commissioner or as a Clark Atlanta student, has shaped your vision for Stockbridge?
Oh, that is a good question. And I can't give you one specific goal, not one bit. I have to say, every single position I've had, every single achievement I've done, whether it was and let me be specific. When you say commissioner, I'm a planning commissioner for the city of Stockbridge. And so every single planning and development opportunity we look at, every single budget I review for treasurer, every single event, every single community service event we've had as freshman class president, or even the state president for the NAACP and traveling across the state, all of those positions have prepared me to see what a thriving community looks like, what multi-generational opportunities look like, because that's what I want to build here in the city. My vision is to build a multi-generational thriving community where we can live, work, and play as a community. So all of those positions have really impacted the outcome of what will come when I'm elected mayor.
So just looking at some of your visions and your plans for, Stockbridge, you're prioritizing economic development, affordable housing, and public safety. And when we look at the recent federal election, and also we're looking at what's important, especially to young people, like economic development and economic opportunity is something that is at the top of mind for younger people, right? And affordable housing is especially important because I know for me, I'm in my 20s. I just turned 28 on Christmas Day, so I know for me, thank you. But I know for me that housing is a big topic because sometimes housing prices are very high and it's hard to, balance, living and working and then also having to pay for another bill when it comes to a house note.
Yeah.
So could you tell us more about why these areas are so important for you as far as the future of Stockbridge?
So for me, and I'm going to toggle the two that you really talked about, and that was housing and economic development. Um, Economic development is something that helps build I wouldn't say the foundation, but it is the blueprint to a thriving city, right? When I talk about economic development, I want to see how we can take opportunities to lessen some of the taxes for our residents and find avenues where we can support our small businesses, where we can put back into tourism, because a lot of people don't know, while Atlanta does have the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., Daddy King, his father, his legacy is here in the city of Stockbridge. And so how can we build on that economically? How can we build his legacy so that it won't, die off? How can we talk about ways that make sure small businesses and some of our larger corporations that may even be interested in coming to the city can work together and partner? So when I'm talking about economic development in the city, I'm making sure that it's the blueprint for how we can build a thriving city. But when it comes to housing, and I love this question because a number one priority, I believe, across the country is affordable housing right now. For me, I want to build something a little bit more strategic because a lot of people don't know Henry County, Georgia is or was deemed a retirement county. And with that, so people come and they retire from the military, they retire from 20 plus years teaching or even Air Force. And so what we had to understand was, how can we go from coming from a retirement county to making sure that we're opening doors and opportunities for other residents? And so what does that mean? I want to build a 80-20 strategy where we do 80% homes, but we want to make sure that they're affordable to people who are making minimum wage. We want to make sure they're affordable for people that don't get the highest salary, but we want to make sure we accommodate the middle class as well. But we also have that 20%. We have the 20% apartments, 20% condos, 20% townhomes to make sure that we have a balanced city. Right now, a lot of our government, they're building townhomes for efficiency and effectiveness. But as mayor, I'm not going to look at quality over quantity. It's going to be quantity over quality, or quality over quantity.
I love that. I love that. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Jayden Williams. He's a Clark Atlanta University student, a student leader on campus. He currently is serving as a commissioner in Stockbridge, and he's running to be mayor of Stockbridge, Georgia. He's 21 years old, so he's looking to be the youngest person to hold the office, and he currently is the youngest candidate to run for the office. And right now, we're talking about his plan and his vision for Stockbridge. So one thing I saw as well is that youth programs and the arts are an essential part of what you want to do if you were elected to be mayor of Stockbridge. And I think that that is important because when we talk about the development of the youth, right? When we talk about after school programs, we talk about making sure that our children and our students, especially middle school and high school, that's what I always focus on, making sure they have productive things to do that can nurture their curiosity. They might want to be a music producer. They might want to be a film director. They might want to be a singer, a writer, and an actor. We want to provide students these opportunities. And I see that that's something that is very central to what you want to do in Stockbridge. So could you elaborate on your vision for these initiatives and the role that you believe that will play in the city's growth?
Absolutely. And so here in Stockbridge, the mayor is a part-time position, right? Although it's a part-time position, it does not mean the mayor has to do part-time work. I'm running for mayor because we need a full-time mayor. We need a mayor that can work on behalf of every single generation. And so when I talk about the arts and young people, I'm looking at how can we incorporate, although we are a part of Henry County school system, how can we incorporate after school opportunities within the city? How can we incorporate empowerment, leadership, civic activities inside of our city so our students and residents can all come out and engage? When it comes down to the arts, I learned a little bit more, and this is where I have to pay homage to Clark Atlanta, of the importance of liberal arts, right? And then also the importance of STEM. A lot of the scholars here in Henry County focus a lot on STEM because it's just a huge thing now, especially with AI, and a lot of new technology advances that are coming out. But specifically for me, I realized that Stockbridge was just picked to be the destination for Henry County's, I think, $13 million. Don't quote me on the stats, but it's $1 million STEM school, and the city was just selected for that. So with that STEM school, how can we make sure as a city we can help accommodate programs or even accommodate opportunities for those young people to also be engaged in local government? That's my plan.
I love that. I love that. So I'm looking at census.gov
Mhm.
and I see this population number for Stockbridge for 2023. I see 35,452 residents of Stockbridge. So it's a small community, right? And you talked about how you want to build upon that community and you want to be a mayor that works full time for that community. So how do you plan to balance that? Because in a community this size, like you know your public leaders, because I know in some cities and states you might not know because there's so much going on and so many things that are happening, and folks that really are tapped into politics know who's leading them. But in a community like this, they probably know you. They probably saw you when you were growing up. So they know you and they know who you are and what you stand for, and also what you're doing at Clark Atlanta. So how are you going to build this fervent community?
I have to say, I have been building. I served as the youth mayor for this city for 2 years. I think I'm the first male to serve in that position. Um, I've served as interns because I wanted to get a deeper dive into how the behind the scenes of our city functions. And now I serve on a planning commission, but I really want to grow the city with going back to economic development and in our housing strategy. Because the more we build our houses strategically, affordably, it'll allow more residents to come in. But I also want to make sure that while we're bringing in those new residents, we're retaining our current. We have to make sure that we're keeping up to date with what our current residents want just as much as those that are interested in coming in. But when we bring those economic tools like attractions, amenities to come into the city, for example, the amphitheater, that'll allow people like, oh, this is okay, this is a new city, or maybe I just haven't seen it before. I'm driving past it in the highway, but I never realized it's Stockbridge. We want to make sure we kind of find opportunities and advances like that to kind of push the city. One thing that I always say in some of my marketing classes with my mentees is that you have to sell your experience. And so in order to be a mayor, in order to run a small city like this, like you said, it is a small city and everybody kind of knows who is who. You have to always sell the experience.
I love that. So if you're just joining us, we're talking to Jayden Williams, Clark Atlanta University student, Stockbridge, Georgia commissioner. He's also a Stockbridge, Georgia mayor candidate. He's the youngest candidate to seek the position at 21 years of age. And I know for me, that means a lot to me because I'm an author and I wrote my first book when I was like 16, 17, and I got it published when I was 17. So I know what that means for young people to take on the mantle and really get out there and live their dreams. And I see you're doing it in public service. And I think that's amazing. But like I said before, I talked about how sometimes we have this thing with age, and especially now. And I think even in our community, we think that, oh, if you're under 25, you don't really know what's going on. Or if you're over a certain age, you're out of touch. You don't know what's going on. People have that sweet spot of being 25 to like 35 where you really know what's going on. Like that's the prime. And I really think that's wrong because there are so many young people that are tapped into what's going on politically and civically within our nation. And I think that you're one of them and you're doing so many amazing things. And like I said, you're the youngest mayoral candidate in Stockbridge history, right? So how do you think your age and your unique perspective as an HBCU student and also a young man in the Stockbridge community, how do you believe that that perspective and that experience and your age brings that unique perspective to this unique position?
I think it's very unique. And although I did not predict the timing, I will say that we saw a lot of change in this generation in the previous election. Now, although it did not go to the beautiful Black woman who graduated from Howard University, it is a strategic opportunity for young people to get involved at this point because she showed that, and I think Michelle Obama said it best at the DNC, that there's still hope lingering around the country. And so for me, running was a kind of eye opener because it's like I have an opportunity to push the next generation to see where they can go in the future. I have the opportunity to show my generation that, hey, it's our turn. Let's get out. And then I also have the opportunity to show the generation before us, hey, we have opportunities. We have bright people. We have scholars, philosophers, politicians that are ready to take the helm, but we need you to trust us. And so throughout the campaign journey, I've been talking to residents older than me because, again, a lot of people in our community is between 35 and up. And so I've had the opportunity to talk to them and say, hey, I need you to trust in the next generation. I need you to let us lead. And so that's been the conversation.
Hey, and that's something that's key. We have to let the next generation lead because that's how we build strong leaders. And that's how we build strong leaders that can run for higher office in the state and also at the federal level in Congress for president, gubernatorial races. You have to build up these leaders. You have to give these leaders like you the opportunity to make things happen. So I want to ask you, well, often when we talk to electoral candidates, the first question that is almost always asked, or one of the more pertinent questions, is the day one question. So if you're elected mayor, you already know where I'm going with it. If you're elected mayor on day one, what's the first thing that you do?
I'm going to take it even further. The night of inauguration, I will have a mandatory meeting with all staffers of the city. And what does that mean? That means I want you all to know, one, there's a new sheriff in town. But I also want you to know that I'm here for you and you're here for me. Let's work on behalf of the team. And so day one, the first thing I plan to do is meet with the department heads. I want to see where the city is currently so I can see in the future and tell our residents constantly where we're heading in the future. And then I also want to do a full tour of the city. I want city staff to jump in a car. We're going to talk about this is the land we own. This is what we don't own, but we're looking to acquire. These are properties that we own. This is where the borderline stops for our zoning, our district, because I want to know what is Stockbridge so I can see every aspect of how we can define it for the future.
I love that. So I want to ask you this as we wrap up this interview. I actually had the opportunity recently to talk to Anthony Kinney. And Anthony Kinney, he was Southern University's SGA president my senior year at Fort Valley. And he's someone that in student leadership I got a chance to connect with. And he just won as a 27-year-old. He won the position of councilman in East Baton Rouge Parish. And that's the same, that's the same place that Southern University resides in, the same district. He's now the councilman for that district. So number one, we know it's possible because I saw someone that I went to school with, that I interfaced with as I was growing HBCU Pulse, get in that position. And we had such an amazing conversation about his vision for what he wants that district to be. But I asked him this before he left, and I want to ask you the same thing. And I'm going to start asking leaders, especially leaders at this age, this exact same thing. Because what we saw this election, you talked about it, is a lot of people are losing faith in the process. Like they believe that government and public service doesn't work for them. They believe it's all pomp and circumstance. They believe that lobbyists and special interests are really what's pushing politicians. And they're like, I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to do anything wrong. I'm going to vote for this person that's going to tear down that system, right? So it's a lot of people, even Black folks, that really feel that way. So I want to ask you, like, what is your what do you want to say to young people that might feel as if voting doesn't matter, if government doesn't matter, if leadership doesn't matter? They're not speaking my language. They're not really out there. Like what is your response to them?
Let me give my kudos to the new now Councilman Kinney because we watched that election as well and very proud of him. And now he gets to represent in school, so even further. But to the next generation, I literally have 3 words. And the 3 words, you take it as you see fit, but these words will help you whether you want to go into your career, whether you're choosing a school, whether you're thinking, what can I do with my government? Especially if you don't trust it. And I had to realize this as well, but the 3 words are believe, inspire, and create. Believe in those you have elected. A lot of people forget that behind the title, that is still your neighbor. That's still somebody that's trying to make it just as you are. And people are going to try to make the best decisions that they think are for the community. And if they don't, you have 2 options: vote them out or go get them. The second is to inspire. In government, just as much as the constituents work for us, we work for them. And so we have to inspire each other to keep going every day. And then finally, the last one is create. Create opportunities whether you see them or not. Create pathways that you haven't seen, even if there aren't any. And then also, just like I said earlier in the conversation, create your seat at the table, and if not, take theirs.
I love that. And one thing I love about your candidacy is what we've learned about politics, especially in this era, is often not the plan, it's how people feel,
Yeah.
right? That's one thing that we saw this past federal election, and we've seen consistently, I would probably say since Barack Obama in 2008.
Oh yeah.
That it's about feeling. And from just talking to you and just seeing your plans, what you want to do, it's a feeling around you. Like it's just a fervor. So I'm excited to see what you do within your race. I'm definitely going to be watching, and I can't wait to make the post on HBCU Pulse that, hey, the youngest mayoral candidate in Stockbridge history. Oh, I can't wait to do it. In my mind, I'm like, listen, we're expanding HBCU Pulse. I might need to reach out to Simon Clark Atlanta so we can get a videographer down there so we can stream inauguration day. We can stream. I'm trying to think. We're trying to expand and we're trying to grow. So that might be coming soon. Just know HBCU Pulse might be down there as a network streaming your inauguration and all of this stuff. That might be happening.
And
right?
You know what? Maybe after we stream that inauguration, we can try to find you a property out here so you can have a site in Georgia. Let's work it out.
Hey, listen, I'm already in Middle Georgia, so listen, we can expand. Like we can
Right.
expand. I'm a Georgia boy from Macon, Georgia, went to Fort Valley, still in Georgia, so I am with it. But listen, I am so proud of you for everything that you're doing, and I appreciate you for this interview. And before we go, I just want to know how we can support you, like how our listeners and our audience and our viewers can support you and help you with your campaign. And also let us know the deadlines, when's voting, when we don't
Yes.
know what the result is. Just let us know the whole entire thing.
So we are waiting on the Secretary of State to issue out our early voting dates, as well as some of the other deadlines. But I can tell you that the election date is November 4th, 2025, to all of the Stockbridge residents. And then, of course, you can support us by following our social medias on all platforms at Jayden for Stockbridge, spelled out FOR, Jayden for Stockbridge. And then go to our website, jaydenforstockbridge.com. Donate, volunteer, request a sign, say you'll make some phone calls, send some texts for us. We greatly appreciate it because we're ready to lead together.
Listen, I love it. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir for some folks here, but I know it's just a federal election and it happens every 4 years, but we need voters to come out in local and state elections.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of where the change starts. Like, yeah, it starts at this level because for folks that's living in Stockbridge, they're going to feel your leadership if you win. They're going to feel it. And it's a trickle down effect sometimes, but it's a trickle up effect as well, because there's a greater vision for Georgia that's being shaped. And you're a part of that vision for where we want Georgia to go. So I really appreciate you for coming on, and thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And once again, as a White House HBCU scholar myself, the 2017 cohort, the fourth cohort out of Fort Valley State University, okay? My fourth cohort folks, they know what's up. I'm very proud of you. You're making our program that I'm an alumni of, that you're currently in, and you're going to be an alumni of it as well. You're making all of us proud, man. So I really appreciate you, and thank you so much for coming on. You're listening to HBCU Pulse Radio.
Like what you hear?
Yeah.
Subscribe to HBCU Pulse Radio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, head to hbcupulse.com to stay up to date on what's going on in the HBCU community. Thank you for listening to HBCU Pulse Radio.